Imaginary friends can be a great way for young children to improve their social skills, and in fact, they are extremely common. But despite that, sometimes these friends turn out to be less than imaginary and a lot more terrifying. Let's dive right into these spooky stories as we count down the top 10 evil demons pretending to be imaginary friends. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Purple Mommy. Starting off strong. This was a story that was posted to Reddit by the user Professor_Dog, and they wrote, quote, Purple Mommy. When my son was first learning to talk, he would tell us about something called Purple Mommy. It could be an imaginary friend, but these details are a little bit creepy. Purple Mommy is all purple with long hair and bright white eyes. At the time, he mixed up purple with black, so he could have meant that she was all black. Purple Mommy picks him up at night and turns off the lights. We would often find my son out of his crib in the morning, which would mean him crawling over the railing into the ground at a time when he was barely walking. Definitely found the lights off in his room a few times too, even though he is terrified of the dark. Purple Mommy needs a bandage because she has blood everywhere. Purple Mommy has no smile, meaning that she has no mouth. Purple Mommy can take her head off. Purple Mommy really doesn't like Daddy. He told us all of this stuff for maybe a year or a little more. If we ever asked where she was, he'd always point to the same spot, a corner of the room behind his open closet door. He would also wake up crying almost every night during this time. Once, during a really rough night, my wife went to ask him what's wrong, and his answer was, Purple Mommy won't let me sleep. I'm not gonna lie, Purple Mommy sounds absolutely terrifying. In our number 9 spot today, we have Kelly. This story starts off when someone, who we'll call Marissa, realized that their daughter had an imaginary friend named Kelly. Kelly apparently lived in Marissa's daughter's closet, which sounds kind of creepy, but I guess even imaginary friends need a home, so who am I to judge? Kelly liked to sit in the rocking chair while the daughter did pretty much anything. Sleeping, playing, you know it. Kelly was in the rocking chair. This friendship went on for quite a while, but it eventually faded away, as most imaginary friendships do. Flash forward 2 years later, and Marissa is watching the new Amityville horror movie with her husband. Marissa's daughter walks into the living room at the exact moment in the movie where the dead girl has completely black eyes, and instead of being absolutely terrified, the daughter looks at the screen and says, "Hey, that's Kelly!" Marissa, at this point, had totally forgotten about the imaginary friend and said, "Kelly who?" And the daughter replied, "The dead girl that lived in my closet." Maybe Kelly wasn't as imaginary as we all once thought. In our number 8 spot today, we have Jaris. Reddit user Biggest Parrot told the internet a story about an imaginary friend her sister had called Jaris. They wrote, quote, "My dad had built her a small playhouse in our backyard where my mom could see her and hear her while she was in the kitchen. My sister would have tea parties and such with her imaginary friend. One day mom heard her say, 'Don't worry, as long as I'm alive, they won't hurt you.' She paused and said, 'Well, if you do that, then I can't help you. It's not nice to kill people.' When my mom asked her what that was about, my sister said, 'Sometimes I have to tell Paris to be a nice person or he can't visit anymore.' I have to ask, what do you even say to that? I mean, I'm glad she knows that Jaris is wrong for that, but I would be absolutely terrified of whatever the hell was going on there." The Reddit user finishes the post by saying, "We moved not long afterwards and she didn't get a new playhouse." Yeah, can't say I blame anyone for that. Hopefully Jaris stayed behind in that house. In our number 7 spot today, we have Arlo. One day, a couple's young daughter started talking about her new friend Arlo. Arlo was apparently quite funny, and the daughter would often tell her parents stories of the things that they would do together. The parents assumed Arlo was a friend from school for a while, but then it came to their attention that there was no Arlo at the girls' school. Okay, so who is Arlo and where did they come from? Flash forward to when the weather started getting warmer and the ice cream man started coming around the neighborhood. The daughter was asking about who this man was and why he was playing music, and the parents just didn't want her to start asking for ice cream 10 times a day, so they told a little white lie. They told her that he was the music man and that he just comes by to play music for everyone. During this time, the pandemic was in full effect, so the family was in lockdown and they weren't seeing anyone else or any other friends. A few weeks go by, and then one day, as the ice cream man comes to the neighborhood, the daughter hears the music, and that's when she looks at her parents and says, "Oh, it's the ice cream man. I know he sells ice cream and that he's not the music man." Apparently, Arlo told her that her parents had lied when they told her that he was the music man. This is when her parents asked her, "Where does Arlo live?" And the daughter replied, "In my closet." In our number 6 spot today, we have Jacob. Reddit user Lil Pig Perez shared a story that involved her niece and her imaginary friend during a trip for ice cream. A lot of ice cream references. She wrote, quote, "As I started driving, my niece asks if Jacob, imaginary friend, could get an ice cream too. I jokingly said Jacob can get his own ice cream. I laughed and said, just kidding, we'll get Jacob an ice cream." She didn't respond, so I looked in the rear view mirror. I couldn't see very much because it was kind of dark, but what I could see was my niece's face. She looked angry and I was about to reassure her that I was kidding, but I realized that she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at something near my ear, towards the back of my head. Then she said, "I said no, Jacob, be nice." No, she didn't mean it. Either that is one terrifying demon of a friend, or this niece has quite an active imagination and a strong desire for extra ice cream. In our number 5 spot today, we have Mr. No Face. This story comes from Reddit and was posted by the user Legacy of Potato about their daughter Emma's new friend. When the announcement of this new friend came, Emma explained to her mom that her new friend, who Emma's mom immediately knew was imaginary, was called Mr. No Face. Okay. It's a bit creepy, but not a reason to freak out. Emma's mom asked a few questions about Mr. No Face, which Emma answered, but then she began to get nervous and quickly shuffled off to her room. Her mom called her back, but Emma just didn't listen, which was extremely unlike her. The next day, Emma's school called and said that the mom needed to set up a meeting to come and talk about Emma. When Emma's mom asked Emma why her school would be calling, Emma insisted that they were making up lies about her, and that she was especially upset that they had apparently told her that Mr. No Face wasn't real. The next day, Emma's mom went to the school to speak with the teacher, and the teacher explained that Emma was exhibiting some strange and disturbing behavior and asked if she had been watching any horror films lately. Emma's mom began to get defensive and asked for more explanations as to what the teacher could possibly be talking about. The teacher said that Emma had been talking to someone named Mr. No Face. Okay, it's an imaginary friend. Kids have those. What could possibly be so bad? The teacher then went on to explain that Emma had been acting out and that she had been drawing some really gory pictures and telling the other students that Mr. No Face wants their blood. The mother couldn't believe what she was hearing and she raced home to ask Emma about these accusations. When she arrived home, her mother, Emma's grandmother who had been looking after Emma, looked pale white, like she had just seen a ghost. Emma's mom ran to the kitchen and it was there that she saw Emma. Emma turned around to face her and her neck was cracking. Once she turned around, Emma's mom saw that her eyes were now pitch black. Emma spoke in a low, guttural voice and said, "He wants blood. Yours will be shed." The mother screamed, "Give me my daughter back," and Emma replied, "She's mine." The Redditor ends off the post by saying, if your child has an imaginary friend with no face, run. In our number 4 spot today, we have Spider Hands. Posted by the user Not Another Whatever, they wrote, "My sister Ashley used to get visited at night by a dead girl with long dark hair and spider hands. Yes, this predated The Ring. Yes, I'm old AF. She moved out the second she turned 18, never looked back. 20 odd years later, our half-brother Trevor moved into her old room. It wasn't long after Trev started sleeping on the sofa or with the lights on and told us about his new friend that he didn't like. She was a dead girl who had long dark hair, an old nightgown, and spider hands. Needless to say, none of us offered to trade rooms with him." I guess this is less of an imaginary friend story because it seems like no one wanted to be friends with the girl. And honestly, I'm not sure that I could possibly blame them. In our number 3 spot today, we have Dawn. Science Nerd 86 posted this story about his daughter and how one day she randomly started talking about a man named Dawn. They wrote, "She always described him in the same way and didn't seem scared at all despite bringing him up every day. She didn't go to daycare and we didn't know anyone named Dawn. Then one day, she got completely freaked out, wouldn't walk around the house alone in case she ran into Dawn, wouldn't sleep in her own room, and would talk about how she hated him because he said mean words to her all the time. About a year after Mean Dawn, we bought a new house. Once we moved, she never spoke of him again." Honestly, while all of that was happening, it would obviously be very concerning and frightening, but perhaps not as frightening as when you realized that she had stopped seeing him after the move. Like a sense of relief, but also a sense of, what the hell just happened? It's almost like a demon confirmation, you know? In our number 2 spot today, we have The Bunny Man. This story starts off when our storyteller was looking after some twins. The twins constantly spoke of a man who was in a Easter bunny costume, and they were both absolutely terrified of him. Of course, all the adults really just brushed this off, assuming it was some imaginary person that the boys made up together. One day, while the babysitter was looking after the boys, one of the boys was in the shower while the other one and the babysitter were downstairs watching TV. The one twin watching TV said, "You need to go check on Matt." referring to the twin in the shower. And at the same time, Matt, the one in the shower, began shrieking, "He's in here, he's in here." The babysitter booked it upstairs and had to check every single room before Matt would calm down. Who is this bunny man, and how are both twins seeing him? And how did the one twin know he was around just seconds before the other one started yelling? All I know is that I feel extremely bad for Matt, because a creepy stranger dressed in a bunny costume who appears in the bathroom while you're showering is enough to scare absolutely anyone. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Hat Man. This story reads, "When my son was about 3 years old, we were living with my mom in an older apartment. I had always gotten a weird vibe from it. The atmosphere felt heavy and a little oppressive, but I assumed it was just because of the age. However, my son started waking up in the middle of the night and would talk to his friend, who he described as the Hat Man. He would also wake up and tell Hat Man that he didn't want to go play with him because he was supposed to be asleep and that he'd see him tomorrow. This was always followed by him waking me up and asking for a glass of water. I knew it wasn't just an imaginary friend when one night I heard him talking, and when he said he'd see him tomorrow, the door to his room closed on its own. This stopped completely once we moved out. The door closing literally just gives me chills, full-on poltergeist vibes. Moving was definitely a good choice, and I'm glad that the Hat Man stayed behind." Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!